Thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Joanna Dressel, and I work with Ithaka S+R, and I'm joined here with Christy McDaniel. And we also have Hannah White and Sarah Wheeler from the University of Louisville, as well as Rebecca Johnson from Southeast KCTC. And we are all going to talk about the different ways that we are researching and supporting adult students who are returning and have administrative holds and past due balances. Christy and I will present first, and then we'll pass it off to our colleagues at Louisville and at Southeast.
Thanks, Joanna. As a note, we'll each do our presentations, and then we'll hopefully have plenty of time at the end for questions and a Q&A session. Let's see. So to start, we thought that we would introduce you to the Ithaka S+R team. We've already introduced ourselves, but we were not the only ones working on our collaborative project with Kentucky CPE focused on re-enrolling adult learners with administrative holds and past due balances. We had a lovely team, some of which are pictured here. If you've never heard of Ithaka S+R, that's okay. We are a nonprofit research and advising organization focused on higher education. More specifically, we do work around expanding access to post-secondary education and enhancing student success. As far as the work we've been doing in Kentucky over the past several months, it was guided by 4 key goals. One was to collect data on administrative holds and past due balances to better understand the challenges related to these things and adult learners. 2, explore policy and practice opportunities to support adult learners by understanding what institutions are doing and what's working. 3, consider implementation solutions and programs that are a good fit for the Kentucky context. And 4, share findings with stakeholders from institutions in Kentucky CPE, which we are doing in part right now. For this work, we had a few work streams. We gathered aggregate data related to past due balances and administrative holds from institutions in Kentucky. We also gathered information about policies and practices around holds and past due balances in Kentucky. And finally, we were able to conduct interviews with institutional stakeholders as well. We had 8 public institutions participate in this work as well as the KCTC system. We do have a lot of information to share with you today, but our agenda is fairly simple. We're going to offer an overview of who are adult learners with some college, no credential, and then we'll discuss challenges and solutions for both students and staff related to holds, unpaid balances, and adult student needs, and the supports that can be offered to them. With that, I will hand it back to Joanna.
Great, thank you. I'm going to pull our chair over so you and I don't have to do this.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so this is a question, who are adult learners with some college no credential, that I bet everybody in the room already has, could answer this question in a 10-minute speech, so we don't need to spend too much time level setting here. But we did consider some things, and I think that the earlier discussions all covered some of these points already. And these are all things that we're thinking about when we're addressing this challenge of administrative holds and past due balances. So one is this idea of age. Oftentimes there's this idea of 25 years, but often these students, that age barrier is blurred a little bit, and those students might be younger than that. Often working part-time or full-time, having responsibilities outside of their classes, as well as family responsibilities, whether that's caring for children, caring for older parents, and accumulating credit from multiple institutions and sources. So transferring in from another higher education institution or bringing in learning experience that could count for credit. And then what we're going to focus in on today is the idea of unpaid balances and administrative holds related to those unpaid balances. And these are going to be things that oftentimes students might acquire at their former institution, which could prevent them from transferring or from re-enrolling at their original institution. So we're going to focus on students in this particular situation, but a lot of the solutions that we're going to bring up are going to be things that will help adults from all sorts of different experiences. So addressing students who do have these holds and past due balances will help all of your returning adults and other students who are returning to your institution. Okay, so setting the stage here. Nationally, the National Student Clearing Research House did find that 36.8 million individuals have stopped out in the United States with some college and no credential. Now, we, as Christy mentioned, have been doing a research project here in Kentucky, and we have found that in the institutions that we surveyed, from a specific time from 2013 to 2023, we're looking at about 260,000 individuals. And an important piece of context that has shaped the policy landscape for these individuals is the federal regulation that came out through the Department of Education and went into effect this July, which greatly limited institutions' ability to use transcript holds for unpaid balances. So with this, that's a substantial limitation on the ability to withhold transcripts. A large population of students who may have an unpaid balance at their former institution will now be able to access their transcript and apply elsewhere. And so this creates a situation, if those students are unable to return to their former institution, that's challenging for both students and those institutions. So a student might miss out on the ability to return to the institution and have the most efficient path to degree completion by returning to the institution they started at. And the institution, as Mike brought up earlier today, may never collect on the debt that the student owes and may then also never see that new tuition revenue from the student returning. So today we are going to cover, and Christy and I are going to cover this in our presentation, and then this is going to go across into our examples from our campus partners as well. Areas that institutions can focus in on in order to recruit, re-enroll, and retain these students who have stopped out and have an unpaid balance and an administrative hold associated with that balance. So one is administrative holds. That one's pretty simple, right? But what we have found is that holds on students' accounts can become unintended barriers to student enrollment, and they can create an outsized burden on staff. So streamlining your institution's processes around holds can make re-enrollment more straightforward for the students and for the staff. And then unpaid balances, very related to the administrative holds that are on the students' accounts. These are relatively small balances at the student level that can stop students in their tracks, and institutions face difficulty collecting on those balances and generating new tuition revenue from re-enrollment. So finding ways to help students manage their past due balances and receive debt relief can be a win-win for institutions. And finally, addressing adult learners' needs. So adult learners need flexible academic offerings, inclusive cultures, and financial support, among other things. But prioritizing adult learners at multiple levels of the institution can help your institution attract, re-enroll, and graduate adult learners. Okay, and I'll turn it over to Christy to talk about our administrative holds.
So in our research, as far as administrative holds, we really focused on the two we found to be most commonly related to unpaid balances, and those are transcript holds and registration holds. Before we jump into the challenges and solutions related to administrative holds, we thought we'd offer some context and scope. So based on the research that we've done within Kentucky, we found that 55,000 students in the state with some credit, no credential, have at least one hold. And these holds can be applied to a student's account for balances as low as 1 cent. So what that means is that holds, which can be very prohibitive for students looking to return, can be applied to a student's account for relatively low balances. And these holds come with a set of challenges for both institutions and for students. So administrative holds can require substantial staff time, knowledge, and coordination. Holds can change meaning over time, and this is especially relevant when you're talking about returning students because they might not have re-engaged with the institution for a set number of time, and the hold that's on their account may no longer be relevant. Additionally, holds can toggle across departments, and staff members have to allocate a lot of time and knowledge to being able to coordinate and communicate across departmental silos. Thinking about holds that are held elsewhere, transcript holds held by other institutions can be administratively challenging as institutions have very few options in helping students acquire those credits that are on that transcript and apply them to their current institution. For students, what we heard is it is often difficult for them to navigate the resources that they need to address a hold once it's applied to their account, it's our understanding that students can be bounced around from office to office, and trying to navigate that maze can be frustrating for both staff and students. So what can we do? We were able to identify a few recommendations with the potential for high impact related to these challenges. One is to audit holds, or review and streamline the full spectrum of holds that can be applied to a student's account, making sure they're up to date, they're relevant, and they're necessary. Two is centralized information for institutional stakeholders that are going to be a part of the hold resolution process, or establish clear processes between departments responsible for holds to make sure that staff members have clear pathways that they can navigate with students to address holds. And finally, strengthen communication, which is more focused on students, ensuring that those that are stopped out know what holds are on their account, as well as they know who to reach out to and how to reach out to those folks to get those holds resolved, and clear next steps that they need to accomplish to make sure that those holds are removed from their account. It's back to you.
Great. Okay, so now we'll talk about unpaid balances. And these are very interrelated with those administrative holds. But it's important to think about how to address them both, because they'll usually need different solutions and may require different people on campus to think about those solutions. So even if you have streamlined your hold process, you know how students know how to get in touch with people to resolve their holds, if there isn't a mechanism for students to manage their past due balances or re-enroll, then many students and staff are still going to face those frustrations in adult outreach efforts. So this is our information that we have collected from our surveys of institutions in Kentucky. I will say that there's always a danger in trying to, communicate complex information. Like, I think we could probably be up here for an hour, but so we're going to talk about things in the averages, and of course that's always just going to limit our exposure to the ways that this information is nuanced from campus to campus. So the actual solutions are going to need to be tailored at the campus level as far as information. But what we have found is that $136.8 million is owed to institutions, thinking about that stopped out student population from 2013 to 2023. At the student level, with the 55,000 students who have an administrative hold due to an unpaid balance, that works out to about $2,500 per student. So again, this is really going to vary. I mean, it's going to vary within an institution as well. As Mike was saying, we're thinking about sorting the list of balances that you have, and it's going to vary from institution to institution. But the numbers that we're seeing here at this average level support a dilemma that came up in our interviews, which is that past due balances are sizable at the institutional scale when they're all totaled together. But at the individual level, students end up getting stopped on their educational journey for relatively low balances. Now, let's talk about collections. So institutions have difficulty collecting on the money that students owe after they've stopped out. And this can get more challenging as the length of time that a student's been separated from the institution increases. So from our survey, we found an average collection rate of about 30%. Now, this is the collection rate that institutions reported to us, which, if we think about that $2,500 average balance level, comes out to about $770. So that's maybe the best that an institution could hope to collect from a student who has stopped out and owes them money. And if we compare that to tuition, we see that students and institutions are really in a lose-lose situation now. Institutions are only able to recoup a fraction of the debt that's owed, and they're unable to see any new tuition revenue from students who might be able to re-enroll. So again, looking at averages, 12 credits of enrollment at the institutions that we surveyed would work out to about $5,000 in tuition generation. So this is twice the amount of that average balance, the $2,500 that a student owes. Re-enrolling in 12 credits would work out on average to about twice of that. And the $5,000 in tuition revenue is much higher when compared to the $770 in anticipated collection amount. Now, for students, even if they pay that small balance, they're still unable to re-enroll at their institution and see the benefits to their income and their life in general that re-enrolling and completing a degree would give them. So it's a difficult situation for both institutions and individuals. So let's think about what those challenges are to helping students re-enroll at a more specific level. So at institutions, past due balance management takes a lot of staff time. So we know that each institution is already putting a lot of work into connecting with their students and trying to keep them on track towards payment. Now, as students stop out, changes to their contact information is only going to make that more difficult. Additionally, there's limited flexibility in what can be offered. So without consistent balance repayment, payment plans, or debt relief options, students are going to face difficulty when they're trying to re-enroll. So one example of this was we were interviewing somebody who was talking about Project Graduate at their institutions, and they had to review manually each balance that a student had if they were interested in re-enrolling. And sometimes this was for as little as $50 or $100. So without a consistent way to anticipate these past due balances when students are re-enrolling, students and staff ended up in a challenging position. And then collections also is something that institutions rely on, but doesn't always show great results, as we saw in the past slide. And when accounts move into collections, sometimes institutions are unable to bring those accounts back, which makes re-enrollment even more difficult. And finally, at the student level, we heard that unpaid balances were consistently one of the biggest barriers to re-enrollment, and it was something that stopped students in their tracks every time. So what can be done here? One aspect is getting in touch with students earlier on in the process. So making sure that students are connected with your institution at different stages of their balances. One example that came up in our research was Murray State, who reviews accounts throughout their semester, and students are continually called and emailed with tailored instructions to stay on track. Other examples are flexibility for past due balances. Again, this was something that came up in our keynote speaker this morning. So one example might be hold agreement forms. We've heard about these at Morehead State University, which give students more time to pay their past due balances and keep them on track for re-enrollment rather than having their balances sent out to external collections. We also know about past due payment plans at KCTCS. And finally, balance relief. And our two campus partners today are going to talk about different balance relief options at their campus. These programs that have all been started relatively recently can help students earn relief towards their balances as they're making academic progress and relieve that sort of lose-lose situation that institutions and students were in earlier.
So when thinking about student support, it might not readily come to mind when talking about administrative barriers like administrative holds and past due balances, but it is an important part of this puzzle. So targeted support, or support that is very responsive to the unique needs and realities of adult learners, is an important part of addressing these barriers for some credit, no credential students. And this is for a couple of reasons. As Joanna mentioned, this summer, the Department of Education put in place a new regulation around transcript withholding. And this regulation is going to make it easier for students to gain their transcript and continue their education elsewhere. And so institutions are going to have to be creative about how they attract students back to their home institutions to continue their education there. And there are a few ways to do this, including making sure these students feel prioritized, supported, and that they're going to have the resources they need to be successful if they do return to their home institution. Secondly, administrative barriers are just one part of the equation for these students, and the challenges that these students face, including past due balances and holds, are often interconnected. So it takes a holistic approach to make sure that they can successfully re-enroll and persist to degree attainment. With that being said, there are quite a few challenges related to making sure that these students get the support they need. Data meant to identify and track these students are not always readily available, and contact information for these students can change over time, making outreach really difficult and making it challenging to make the resources that are available to these students available to them. Something that we heard repeatedly throughout our interviews was lack of dedicated funds for returning students is a major challenge in making sure that they get the resources and support they need for their unique needs. As Joanna mentioned earlier, adult students bring credits from multiple sources, whether that's other institutions, other credential programs, work experience, etc. But it can be difficult for institutions to articulate and apply those hard-earned credits to an existing degree pathway. Something we regularly heard is that it's really difficult to operationalize credit for prior learning. Also, because they have competing responsibilities, returning students often need flexible course options like evening courses and online courses to make sure that coursework is accessible for them. And lastly, connected to the lack of dedicated funds, short supply of staff capacity can also make it difficult to make the resources and support these students need available to them. On the student side, finances once again repeatedly came up as a challenge, and this was the case whether a student left their institution with an unpaid balance or not. Being able to afford their degree was a major concern. Other major concerns included basic needs like transportation and childcare, as our keynote mentioned. And a lack of transportation or childcare options can make it very difficult for these students to integrate coursework into their existing responsibilities and schedules. Last but not least, these students can find it difficult to engage in a 9-to-5, Monday to Friday in-person experience. So the day-to-day operations that includes courses and support services at a college or university do not always meet their needs. So what can we do? Because there are so many challenges related to this topic, we tried to offer quite a few recommendations. So one is centering belonging and making sure these students feel welcome, prioritized, and engaged at your institution. And there are a few ways to do this. A couple of options are to create a web page for adult learners where they can access information that is tailored to their needs, the questions that they might ask, and gives them information about how they can go about re-enrolling. You can also designate a dedicated office or singular point of contact so these students have one place that they can go to get their questions answered and to get the resources they need. Institutions can also look to revising academic offerings to make sure that these offerings are accessible and meet the needs of students. This includes offering flexible course offerings through online and evening classes, designing degree programs that meet students' goals and timelines. These students often have limited time and finances to allocate to degree attainment, so efficiency is key. Related to that is developing processes for credit transfer and credit for prior learning, so students can leverage experiences and credits that they've already worked really hard to earn and apply them to a degree they're seeking to earn now. And finally, because finances, again, did come up quite often in our conversations, it is important to create flexible financial aid resources for these students. And that can take a couple of forms. So reviewing communication and policies for brevity and clarity to make sure that these students know what's required of them and what's available to them. Training financial aid staff to coach students in financial literacy so that this time around they are well prepared to afford that degree. And finally, allocating scholarship funding to make sure that affordability isn't such a challenge for students looking to return. And I will pass it back.
Great, thanks, Christy. So that's our last slide, and I'm excited to turn it over to our campus partners. Oh, no, it's our, no, okay. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry about that. So this is our last slide. That's what Christy's making sure I didn't fly off and not do our conclusion. This is our last slide. And just to recap our high-level impact opportunities that we shared before we do go into some specific programs that we think are doing really great work at some of our campuses. One is thinking about administrative holds, really making sure that your processes around administrative holds are streamlined in ways that are efficient and save staff energy, while also removing the barriers of confusion and frustrations that students might have when they're interested in re-enrolling, but then find out that they have a hold. Second is implementing measures where students can either manage their past due balances and stay on a path towards re-enrollment, or perhaps even offering debt relief programs where students can re-enroll, bring in new tuition revenue, and earn relief towards their past due balances. And finally, necessary along with all of these is offering the right student support so that students can return and can in your institutions have the capacity to re-engage with these stopped-out students. So thank you all very much for your attention, and I'll turn it over to Hannah and Sarah. There you are. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm starting a timer for myself because I could talk about adult students all day, so I want to make sure that we stay on schedule here. But I'm Hannah White. I'm the Assistant Director for Adult Services at the University of Louisville.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Wheeler. I'm an Associate Director of Admissions at the University of Louisville, specifically for Transfer and Adult Services.
So we'll just go ahead and get started and go over some of our programs that we have launched semi-recently with a couple of them, specifically for our returning students or our adult students in general. The most exciting one for me this year has been our Comeback Cards program. We started this program in spring of this year, so spring 2024 was our first semester. And really, it came out of a couple of reasons. So some of these we've talked about all day, and honestly, my numbers here are outdated now, but as of 2020, we knew that there were more than 118,000 adults just here in Jefferson County who were 25 and older with some college and no degree. So we really wanted to look at that population and see what we could do as far as designing a program that met their needs. And then another big thing that happened this year that we've talked about was July 1st, where universities could no longer withhold transcripts for students who owed a balance. And so that was big for us too, because as you all know, there's been a lot of movement since then. And we wanted to find ways where we can incentivize students to stay with us at U of L and finish their degree with us rather than transferring elsewhere. And then also we've talked about this too, the big scary cliff of 2025. But this some college no degree population can offset that decline of our traditional age college goers. And then also our mission of Comeback Cards aligns with our university strategic enrollment goals, which are looking at ways that we can incentivize adult learners to come to U of L, but also be successful at U of L and find that community there. So it came about really a couple years ago. Wes Parton, who is now deceased, was our former associate director, and he wrote a proposal for a program at U of L that was similar to the Warrior Way Back program at Wayne State University. So in that proposal and kind of the data that we looked at were adult learners going back 10 years. So at that point, it was like 2011, I think, when we first started looking at numbers, who owed a balance at the University of Louisville. And I think we looked at 5,000 or less when we first looked at numbers. And so it was great, as they were talking about earlier, we had their contact information, we knew how to reach them. So we started at the beginning, well, really the end of last year, with an email campaign, just saying, hey, we have this program. At the time, we were only offering $2,500 in debt forgiveness, and now we've increased that to $4,000. So we just started with an outreach campaign, and we were really expecting, maybe 40 people to bite and get a response. And then we came back, and I think I had about 200 interest forms for the first semester. So we were really blown away by the interest in the program, and it's really grown from there. And then the funding came from a local grant with the Gaines Foundation that covered originally the first 3 semesters of the program. We've now been able to extend that to spring 2025. So we'll talk about funding later. And so the requirements for the program, we were looking really at 4 specific parameters. So the first one was obviously they needed to be previously enrolled at the University of Louisville to have that balance with us and those credits. And then we were looking at bachelor's degree attainment. So we're looking at students who have that some college but no degree. So they haven't earned their bachelor's degree yet. And then we looked at students who've been away from the university for a minimum of 2 years. With us at that point, that's when we would direct them to the admissions office to reapply. So we set that parameter there. And then we ended up owing a balance of $4,000 or less at the start of the program. And so that has been honestly one of the most flexible parts of these parameters because we've had students who have owed, I think the highest was $11,000, and we got that down in collaboration with other university partners to where they could participate in the program and finish their degree. And then the accounts couldn't be in collections. That's been flexible too. We've had students who were just sent to collections a couple months ago that we pulled them back out, or we've had students pay collection fees and pull them out of collections and get them in the program. I'll talk about this later, but our bursar's office has been amazing with working with us, so that's been a huge part of this program is that collaboration. And then in order to stay in the program, I check up with them at the end of every semester, so we can pay them, so we can put that money on their past due balance, but then also to make sure that they're still in good standing with the university, that they're meeting SAP, they're meeting with an academic advisor and talking about their graduation pathway. And that they have their tuition fees for their current semester covered. So if there's a gap there, we're talking about how we can meet that, if there's aid that they need, and helping them find that resource. So in return for all this, students who enroll part-time get $500 per semester, and that's all semesters, by the way. It's not just spring, fall. We also do it for summer, towards their past due balance, and then full-time study is $1,000. So we kind of continue that until a student's balance is either completely gone or they graduate, which is our ultimate goal. Once they graduate, if they still have any past due balance, we completely wipe that so that they can not only obtain their transcripts, but their diploma. And so where we are now, this is probably the most exciting part. So our first semester, spring 2024, we had 19 students enrolled. Again, that was super exciting. I thought I was only gonna have like 40 people say that they were interested at all. So to have 19 students who were not only eligible, but were able to be readmitted and enrolled in class was really exciting. We had 11 of those students part-time and 8 enrolling full-time. This second bullet point was probably the one that I was most proud of. We saw these students come back and knock it out of the park with their grades. They were locked in, they had a 3.2 average term GPA. And so when I look at those students and I look where they were in 2011, and they're barely at good standing. So obviously something wasn't aligning with them, whether it was the program, whether life was happening to them. We see that they've taken that time off and they're coming back to U of L focused and excited to finish the degree. So I was very excited to see how well our comeback card students were doing. And then going into financials, 41 of those students received a Pell Grant. So that was really important to us too, was them coming back and not incurring more debt with the university. So trying to find ways that we could get these students funded for tuition. Another one of those was our industry partners. We have some of them here today. So 2 of these students just in spring utilized their employee tuition benefits through one of our industry partners, U of L Health. So that's another thing that we've really leaned on with our adult students, is talking to them about, go talk to your employer. They might pay for you to come back and finish this degree. And so that's been a really exciting part too. And then just in the spring semester, we generated $155,000 just in tuition revenue. And we only paid about $13,000 in past due balances. So that's a really impressive ROI for one semester and 19 students. And once again, that's tuition revenue we never would have seen without this program. So just spring was really exciting. And then summer and fall, we grew that. So we had 62 students enrolled in the program. It's probably a little bit higher now that we're past the enrollment deadline for our second half of the semester. But just looking at fall, we had 62. So we retained 68% of the spring 2024 cohort. I was aiming for 70, so I was pretty excited about that number as well. And this third point's important. We had 46% of our students who enrolled in a fully online program. Some of our online learning team is here, and they've been a really great collaborator in this space, working with our students, finding a program that fits for them and is flexible for them. 31% were enrolled in our organizational leadership and learning program, which has a fully online option. And one thing that's really unique about this program is that it offers credit for prior learning. So that's a huge selling point for our students who have significant work experience since they've been at U of L or while they were at U of L previously. So they've been able to take advantage of some of our other things that we offer for our adult students. And then comeback card students, before they even enrolled back in the program, had already earned 79 credit hours. So most of them were sitting in the junior and senior status, which means they're almost done. They're almost at the finish line. So we're really excited to see our first group of graduates cross the stage either in this December or next spring. I've been keeping an eye on some of them that are getting close. And then after fall 2024, we're anticipated to earn about $400,000 in tuition revenue. So once again, that's just money that we never would have seen. And just thinking about, if all of our students went full-time, which they're not, we would only pay down about $60,000. So that's a pretty big ROI there. So I'll turn it over to Sarah. We had another initiative that we launched end of last year, beginning of this year, if you want to talk about that.
So we had something to kind of keep the momentum going with comeback cards called Return to the Nest. Everything that U of L does is a play on cardinals, so enjoy our play on words. This was something that we had one-time funds to do at the end of the fall term to also help students who had stopped out but maybe didn't have to reapply. So we were looking at students who had been out no more than 2 years. Students who had at least 96 credit hours, we were hoping to help them kind of, again, edge that way toward graduation. We were also looking for students who were Kentucky residents, kind of this little niche area, because we wanted to help them earn their degree. And then we also were looking for students who could we reach really quickly that we could get enrolled for spring. Again, these were one-time funds that our Vice President for Enrollment Management and Student Success helped, and then also the Provost also helped. And then our goal was to get about 10 to 15 students. We wanted to aim small. And to enroll them for spring of '24. We got our data from institutional research and kind of drilled down to those parameters. And we had about 95 eligible students. And so we reached out via email. Again, these were really high, I shouldn't say high touch points, but touch points we wanted to make sure that we could connect with quickly. We also used social media. So we have found with transfer and adult students that our Facebook communication, we get a lot of impressions and contacts through there. So we use Facebook and our email. It worked, sort of. What we learned from this, so we ended up reaching out to 95. We had 57 students interact with us. We had 3 enroll. So I am in the mindset, and I think our whole team is, of that we kind of throw things out there and say, why not? And we did get a return on investment on this. So 3 students enrolled. We generated about $19,000 in tuition revenue and $3,000 in institutional funds. So I didn't even say this at the beginning, y'all. Return to the Nest. The incentive for students is that we would have them return and pay for one course, one 3-credit course. So I apologize that I didn't start out with that. I got too excited. Something that I think we want to do in future semesters, but I think maybe we want to give more time to this. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about as challenges and things we learned from these experiences. We partnered really closely with the Student Success Center on both of these initiatives because of persistent grants, academic advising, and some other things to get students in, so we could look at degree audits as well. So where are we now? Still chugging along. And here's some other things that we've talked about that Hannah and I have worked on that she's going to start talking on here in a second, but other things that we offer.
So I highlighted 2. We have more, but I don't have all day. So 2 big ones for us have been our Fresh Start and academic forgiveness programs. And then we have a scholarship specifically for students who've been out of school for 5 or more years cumulatively. So Fresh Start, a lot of schools have a similar program, but what Fresh Start does is reset the student's cumulative GPA from their previous enrollment. So I've had a lot of students where, they're wanting to come back and their GPA, they're just not proud of it. And I look at them and I say, well, you might be eligible for Fresh Start. And they look at me and they're like, really? Like, we can just wipe this away and start again? I'm like, yeah, we can. And so courses with passing grades, we count them for credit and we use it to satisfy program requirements. And we don't really mess with their earned and attempted hours. It's really just the GPA that we reset from their enrollment. And then, outside of Fresh Start, we do what's called compassionate withdrawal. So I work with a lot of students who were excellent students until really their, last 2 semesters or even 1 semester before they stopped out. And it's like life happens, they might have had caregiving responsibilities or work responsibilities, or a pandemic happened, and they really just want those semesters wiped. So with compassionate withdrawal, we will turn a failing grade to a withdrawal, and so that doesn't negatively impact their GPA. And then going on to the OSHA Reentry Scholarship, this is a $5,000 a year renewable award. And like I said, we're looking at students who have stopped out for 5 or more years. And there's no GPA or hour requirement, which is unique about this one from all of our other scholarships. And we ask them to write a personal statement about what they want out of this degree, what they've been doing since they've been out of school, if they're working, if they're caring for their family, if they've been in the military, because we know that all of that prior knowledge is just as valid, and we want to use this scholarship to honor it. And so another big change that came with this scholarship was that now students can be fully enrolled in a fully online program. And previously, you had to be in person, and we just know with many of our adult students that's not a reality. So making this change was really important to us as well, to make sure that we are serving our students in a better way. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some barriers and challenges that we've seen our students face. And I think, we've talked about some of these things today, but just that statistic earlier about the amount of US jobs that we know will require college credentials or training. So I work with tons of students who, they've been in their career for 10 years. They've been at the same job working, and they can't get a supervisory role. They can't go on to the next step because they don't have a bachelor's degree. And so for us, we've tried to design programs that meet that need of getting that degree in the quickest amount of time, spending the least amount of money. And then we also know that our students have caregiving responsibilities. So they might be raising a family, they might be taking care of their parents. And so again, flexibility is a big part of what we've been trying to do. And that coincides with work obligations as well. Previous debt, we've talked about that one a lot today, as well as credit transfer policies. So, I hear from students all the time, like, are my credits going to expire? And so we think about ways that we can work with students on accepting credit. So prior learning credits is a big example of that. And then, we've talked about academic progress and misalignment with the degree program and lack of belonging. But these are all things that we keep in mind when we're designing programs for students or working with them. So Sarah, would you like to talk about some of our recommendations?
Absolutely. So here's a fun time, because we always like to learn from what we've done. I think one of the biggest things that we would recommend also that we've learned is that collaboration with our campus and industry partners is key. Again, I mentioned the Student Success Center earlier. That's been one of our biggest partners in all of this. I think number one, because they help us with data collection, but they also offer these beautiful things called persistence grants. One of the key things that we learned with our comeback cards, if we had students who were on the threshold of our debt balance, if we referred them to Student Success, then they had the persistence grant that could help them get down just within our threshold. So we worked very closely with them. The Bursar, as Hannah stated earlier, the Bursar has been instrumental in helping us get holds off students' accounts, helping them get pulled out of collections. So they have been tremendous. Financial aid also, one of the things we want to make sure about is that when our students are coming back to us, they have paid for their semester up front, or they have aid to help them pay for that semester so they're not going into further debt. So financial aid has been beautiful. And then again, Hannah had said this as well, we have a good group of corporate partners, and they have great tuition benefits. And so we've been chatting with our students about this and recommending that benefit. Something that we learned with Return to the Nest, early is better. So one of the things that we talk about, especially this fall, as we're getting ready to maybe launch a second round of comeback cards, timing is everything. And so when we look to 2025, number one, are we getting supported to move forward? But also timing for students and making sure that they have time to meet with advisors, get their admissions applications in, make sure they have time for registration and all of those things, because we want to make sure they're prepared and ready to hit the ground running when they come to campus. And then social media. Again, social media is where it's at. Our highest impressions and our highest interaction were our Facebook page. And so those are some of the things that we recommend if you're looking to do something like that. Highly recommend. And we're gonna pass it along.
Great, thank you both so much. Yeah, please. So we're gonna load another PowerPoint before we get into our last speaker with Dr. Johnson. So this is a great time. If there are any questions now, we can do, a question break 1 and then a question break 2 after our last presentation. So anyone have any questions for me and Christy, for Sarah and Hannah? Yeah, please.
Just very quickly, administrative holds. I know obviously most of those are academic, I'm assuming. Are there some other categories that are big in that are non-academic?
So the holds that came up in the research project that we did, everything that we saw was about, related to registration and transcript holds related to the past due balances. But I am curious, Hannah and Sarah, as you are working on re-enrolling students, have you seen other holds come up on a student's journey?
Well, we have holds that are like so old. I mean, there's been times where I've been working with a student and I've gotten pretty good at holds, and I'll look at holds and I'm like, I have no clue what this is. Yes. And so I walk over to the registrar's office and they have no clue what that hold is. So a lot of them are old miscellaneous holds that we don't use anymore. I feel like we see final transcript holds where students, and it's on us, we're not communicating well enough that you need to send this transcript and which transcripts you need to see or send to us. So those are big ones. But then, I mean, things like parking tickets, why are we letting a library from 2008 affect a student registering for classes in 2024? So those are ones that come to my mind. I don't know if you have more.
No,
Sarah.
random. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, yeah, random ones, the transcript hold, maybe a very old, like advising hold for a student if they started a term but they never enrolled. So things like that we're working out. Yeah.
I saw one that was with KCTS, and it wasn't a bad hold, but it made it very hard for the student because it was a cohort hold, and they had to go to the specific advisor. Well, that specific advisor was on one campus, and so they had to travel. They were in one city, and they had another campus there. They had to travel to the other campus to get to that advisor. And they didn't really do online advising. Yeah. And so that, and where I am an advisor but also a recruiter, I had a student saying, how will my credits transfer? Well, I can go in and look. Yeah. I can look at the unofficial. I could even get access to the unofficial because they were in a specific cohort. Mm-hmm. And because of that cohort hold, that held everything up. And we had to go around and above it, and like we had to even go to the advisor and say, listen, send me the transcript unofficially so I can get this person looked up.
Hopefully that was long ago.
It's been about 3 or 4 years ago. But it's only in one specific school, and it wasn't yours.
I was going to say, because I had never heard of that before.
Oh, and I was like, this is annoying. And it was like, when it came up once, it came up 5 times.
Yes.
Yeah, I think those holds are well-meaning, but then what it actually takes for a student to resolve them can be a larger barrier than we anticipate. So it looks like we have some questions building, which is great. Dr. Johnson, do you want to go ahead and give your presentation, and then we can all come back together?
Sure. I'm really passionate about this topic. I've been at Southeast for 29 years, and I have tried to be a champion about the transcript hold. And I understand, students, as she said, life happens, and thankfully KCTCS does not hold transcripts any longer. So that is one thing that myself and a few of my counterparts really champion, that it's who made this policy? How can they ever get a job to pay that debt? And some of the things that I'll go over that we do at Southeast, that arrow right there, maybe. I'm not sure. I may can just flip. Yeah. Oh, is it working now?
Great, thank you.
I think the battery's dead. You all did such a good job, the battery is dead. Well, I will say kudos, though. You all did a really good job. And you can tell who's here for the students. You can really tell when you do.
Hey.
So wait, okay, one of the things that we do at Southeast, and I'm not going to really speak for KCTCS, I'm just going to speak for Southeast because some of our institutions may do things differently. I'm from the campus, one of the campuses that, or the colleges, not campuses, that's in a rural area, And so you have 200 students in a rural area that's affected. That's a large population in your region. And that's just my college. We do the Fresh Start program. Now, we started this probably in 2018, I think was the first time that we did the Fresh Start program. And as you can see, there were conditions. We went in, we would lift the hold, and as long as the student made a C or better that semester, we would wipe the debt out. The first year that we did this, we helped 32 students, $160,000 worth of revenue. And that was the first year. It wasn't necessarily about the revenue for us. It was about helping the students, because that's your community. If those students can't go to a high-paying job, high wage, high demand, how are they ever going to pay that debt? And so it really took a team effort. And it took, we had some on our team that, and you all can relate, they had been there for a very long time. They did not want to change. They did not want to wipe that debt out. I mean, it was like trying to take the books out of the library. And we finally said, we're going to do it. We have to. That's what we're here for. And so to help those students, and we showed that return on investment. We showed the students that we helped in our community. We waited, and then after the pandemic was lifted, we done it again. In 2023, we did it again. But you have to be very careful. I will say this as a learning lesson, because from a small community, word gets around. Don't pay that bill, they'll wipe it out, you know. Yeah. And so you have to kind of find that balance. And really and truthfully, that's not happened with us at Southeast. They have been very appreciative, and they've not taken advantage of it. And so one of the other things that we do, this is the fun part for me, because I got into golf about 5 years ago, so I get to be on the team for this. So we have golf scholarships for emergency aid. And so what we do is we solely dedicate that money that is generated. This is one, I'm not going to present all of them, but this is just one of the endeavors. We do several things through our foundation also. That the money goes to the emergency aid. And the majority of the emergency aid, guess what it goes to? Past due balances. And we wipe those accounts off. And another thing that we do, I think our partners here mentioned they did it, or they did, I think you still do it. We went in and we looked and we did a large communication campaign. And that was for students who had 30 credit hours or more. And so we had Family Scholar House, we had air staff, we did personal calls, we did emails, we did texts. We had the registrar actually make out plans that says this is what you have to take, and you can get a degree. You can get a credential. And so a lot of those that we come in contact with either had a transcript hold or a past due balance. And so the emergency funds come into play at that point, that we knew, we can take care of this student, we can take care of this student. And I will have to say, we do feel like a lot of the things that we're doing and have done in the past has helped our enrollment and our credentials. And I'll show that later, but look, this past year, last academic year, we had the highest credentials ever awarded at Southeast. And we attribute the majority of this to not only our academic programming, because we've changed a lot of our academic programming. We're not really a 16-week institution anymore. I mean, we have 8-week, we have Christmas, we have summer, we have 5-week, and we give opportunities for students. And not only that, if they need a little extra time, we'll give them a little extra time. We do as our partner here does. We go in, we work with a lot of the faculty. If we see a grade and they write a statement that this happened in life. You know, I had a family member pass away. I'm the sole caregiver of my grandparents. My grandparents were raising me. We try to go in and look at every situation. And now we're a smaller institution and we're able to do that. But we will get their grade changed from the failing grade to a withdrawal. And one of the other things that we have found that has made a large success for our students is, you know how it is. Students will come in and they'll register first week of class. You don't even hear from them. You don't see them. So what we do on our no-show policy is we have the faculty do a no-show report. We back those students out like they never registered. Because in the past, guess what happened? I mean, that's that old academic higher education world. They left them on there. They registered. They must pay that bill. They never paid the bill. And then the transcript would be held up. So we backed them out. And so this is just one of many that I'm talking to. We also partner with our local organizations. We have wonderful partners in our region. I mean, wonderful. We can go to them and say, this student owes money. Can you help them? They'll pay their past due balance. They have to enroll in a program, and it has to fit within their defined criteria, but they'll wipe out their programs. I mean, out their prior bill. On the transcript hold, this is the one that's really touchy to me. Well, they're all touchy to me, but being in student affairs for 29 years, I've seen this. For example, we have partners in the state right now that 4 students just this past semester had to withdraw because they couldn't get their transcript. Their bill was so high, and it was ridiculous. They'd been there 1 semester. All 4 of them, 1 semester. 1 student was in respiratory care. 1 student was in the nursing program. They were in programs that they could have completed within a year and a half and had to withdraw. Tears in their eyes. And we go in and we assign a student success coach. We do everything we possibly can at Southeast and all of our KCTCS colleges. We work with the partner that the student owes the bill with. And sometimes we can get them to do an appeal. One institution finally did 2 years ago. The student owed $30,000. And they were able to do an appeal, and the institution agreed to help. And I feel like that's what we have to do as higher education institutions in Kentucky. We have to learn to partner with each other. We have to say, okay, I'm going to give you a semester on our side. And as long as you meet this criteria and agree to pay us back and you complete that program, we will lift this transcript hold. I mean, we have got to do a better job in the state of Kentucky. I feel like we're making headway. We're probably more advanced and further along right now than we ever have been, and I'm so thankful for that. But we also let them have the 1 semester, so they can enroll 1 semester. But then that's what happens the second semester. If they still can't get the transcript, they have to withdraw. But we at least allow that 1 semester to give us, our student success coaches, time to try to work and help the student out. And we've already talked about the new regulations. I think both of our partners have talked about that. We go over that. We see if they fit into that. And we also do the express enrollment. So the express enrollment, because time is of an essence with this. I mean, it really is. If you work in our world, you understand 2 to 3 weeks, that's a big time. So we do express enrollment. We did this at KCTCS years ago, and so at Southeast, we pretty much kept that mindset. And at Southeast, one thing that we have done also is we've made one-stop shops. So if a student comes in, we're working on our last campus right now, which is our largest campus. If a student comes in, they can do admissions, they can get advising, they can do their financial aid, they can get their loan counseling, they can walk out the door, even the testing, and walk out with a schedule in hand. That has helped us tremendously identify these students first and foremost, really, really fast. And are we perfect? By no means, but this has helped us more than anything is the express enrollment to identify these students. Now, in saying that, we also have done with our communication plan, we've gone back, we've looked who owes money, we've done calls. Family Scholar House also helps us with that. We have our staff, which is limited, but it's becoming more of a team effort. And in saying all that, you know, I used this for a previous presentation that I did, but we are up now at Southeast, our enrollment, and I think the last time it was reported, and I hate to brag on our college, but I'm going to because that's what I'm here for. But we were leading the system, KCTCS system in enrollment. And I say that to say that's our region, that's our community, that's helping our students, that's helping, if you're helping your students succeed and graduate, what does that mean that you're doing for your community? Because that's our members. Our retention rate is up. And that retention rate's kind of basically right back to where we were pre-COVID. Credentials, I mentioned that, highest credentials we had ever awarded to date. Actually, that number went up to the 1400s. And our graduation rate went up to 43.6%. So it's took a lot of work. It's worth it. That's what we're here for. And so that's what we do at Southeast. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you all so much. We do have about 15 minutes, so happy to take questions, and I can pass the mic around too so that questions are heard by everyone in the room. Yes. Okay, go for it.
What I'm most impressed about, we're dealing with a demographic challenge, but we're seeing different departments work together in collaboration. We find, I've been around a day or two. We find silos, sometimes academic departments, student affairs department, missions, records, finance, all these different departments. And they're like foreign entities. We don't know each other. So working through the demographic challenge with adult learners has not only forced us to serve a population that's not being served, but it's forced collaboration across an institution and among institutions. So that's what I'm most impressed by, is the collaborative spirit.
Yeah, great point. I definitely noticed that as well. I'm curious how that collaborative spirit came about. Was it always there, or did you find that there was some convincing as you worked with different departments across your campus?
Yeah. Well, I think we both can say this. So I find at our institution we have people that have been there a very long time. I think this is just repetitive of Kentucky. Well, any state really. So the long standers, and then I'm a newbie, so, 2 years. But I think you have a lot of passionate people that you work with and that are very interested in these topics, and maybe you just needed to ask the right question, and then everybody came to the table.
I will say, December 2016, and I've been in student affairs, like I said, for 29 years. I got my team together, our student affairs team, and there was, as you said, the silos. And it takes, I think, a perfect blend of the oldies like me with the newbies. And they have to understand that it's students first, no matter what office you work in. And so I did a little game, and I had these little postcards, and I said, if you know of any challenge, any opportunity, anything, write it on this card. If you think that we need to change, period, write it on this card. And there, I think at the time we're 30-some in the room. So I put them all up on the board, and I asked them, I said, on this board, is there anything that jumps out at you? Not one person had written the word student on that card. Not one. And so in 2016, and they sat there, and I didn't do it as a gotcha. I truly didn't, because listen, I sat in the floor with them. And I said, we've got to turn our mindset around. This college is here for the students, not us. We're here for the college. And so it really changed. So in saying that, that's when they really become a one-stop shop. We'll have admissions office, we'll have the financial aid, but now it's student success coaches. And it took some hurdles, I will not lie, but if you walk in there, they are a student success coach, and they're going to help anybody. If they need to do their application or put their schedule in, they're going to do it. Now, saying that, it took the other departments, and I'm very candid, our business office. Lord have mercy. That was one. If you touch the money, it's like they're going to lock that door on you. And so it really did take statistics and data to show. And then when you show that data and you show how many students are affected and you say, we're never getting this money back, never. They're not going to walk in this door when they have to pay for diapers, for food, and pay this bill. And so when it took that and you show the data, and then it literally got to the point, just do it one time. Just do it one time. And when that money came in, it was like ding to them, and so it became a team effort. And that's just the real of it.
I'll say a couple things that I would add to that is, in my experience, one thing about me is I don't mind being annoying about stuff. If I have a student who's in my office and they've got this, registration hold from 2008 on there, and that's the only thing keeping them from enrolling, and they've called the registrar's office 5 times in the past week and haven't gotten a response, I'm going to say, wait 1 second, and I'm walking over to the registrar's office and asking them, why is this hold on here? That's one thing. Just be annoying to people, But another thing that I think that's been cool this year is we started an adult student advisory board. So, we leaned on people from all across campus to interact with adult students, our military connected center, our online learning team, different advisors, some people that work in the Dean of Students office. And we talked about specific challenges that we face and how we can work collaboratively to solve those problems and not necessarily create new initiatives, but to look at what we already do and find the holes in them and fix them, and do that without any money, without any, upper leadership buy-in, just the people who are on the ground already passionate about it. So that's been really cool.
Whoever saw your hand, yeah.
So this question is actually for the Ithaka S+R people. When I was looking at your data, as Dr. Johnson said, sometimes it's just the presentation of the data. You said the average debt upon graduating from a Kentucky institution is about $2,500. And if a student goes to collections, the average return on that is about $770, or 30% of the outstanding bill, right? But averages hide a lot of noise in the data. So I'm kind of wondering what else you saw from that. And can you say a little bit more about how, because for a lot of offices, it is going to be about the money. What chance do we have at getting any money back? Are there indicators that that money will come back to us or not? Are there more effective ways than collection agencies and some of the stuff we've been talking about, repayment specialists, not sending things to collections? Are we more likely to get a greater percentage of that money back?
I think that's a Joanna question.
Yeah, great question. And absolutely that point that there is a lot of differences within these averages. So absolutely, I think both in terms of the average balance per student, that really is going to vary. It looks very different for the KCTCS colleges than it does for universities, and as well as the collection rate. So rates that were reported to us were as low as 8% at some institutions. And then I think another part of that is the ability to even actually know what your collection rate is, or are you just making a best guess? So I think that there is a sort of general answer to your question, and then I think that at each campus there's a really specific answer, which is making sure that all the right people who can answer that question in terms of data are working on the problem. Because one thing is this lives in both your financial offices in terms of, okay, who owes money to our institution? And then it lives in your registrar's office or your IR in terms of who has stopped out, how many credits do they have, what's their academic standing? And those data systems aren't always being put together. So I think it's trying to figure out where's the best intervention that we can make, who should we be reaching out to, what's the scale of the problem at my school? It's really about making sure that, going back to that collaborative spirit aspect of things. And then we did get some really promising responses in a survey that we did send out about how students are, what mechanisms are in place to help students stay on a path to re-enrollment. And certainly those payment plan options do seem like they could be a good option for the right student. So if a student is just like, something happens and they can't stay in touch with your university and you can't catch them, then the payment plan option, you might not be able to get them on that payment plan option earlier on. So finding ways that students are engaging with your university from the beginning, or with your institution from the beginning, and staying in communication and having the hold agreement forms so that the student can be making smaller payments, maybe be able to re-enroll, put that hold on pause while they're able to qualify for financial aid or receive other helping aspects. But I think, we saw the sort of spectrum of results from those kinds of incremental payment plan options to these larger debt relief options. And I think especially that kind of, I think it was in U of L where we said, okay, well then sometimes we can get them into this program, which brings their balance down so then they can qualify for this, right? And finding all those different solutions and actually making sure that everybody is talking to each other along the university. Yeah. Oh yeah, please.
See you exercise. This is for Dr. Johnson. So I am kind of curious about your community, because if we remember, one of the slides we saw this morning said that adult students really aren't looking for community as much as our traditional age students. But in what you're describing, the way that you work with your students does actually seem to be very much community-based and an in-person experience. So I'm wondering, in the way that you're delivering student services, do you find that your adult students are looking for evening hours or online options for student services, and then also for academic options? Are there evening and online courses that you're offering, and how do you meet that need, if that is in fact a need in your community?
Yes, we do. We actually brought back a lot of our evening programs due to the need of the adult learners. We also do hybrid courses, and we also do, we're really implementing a lot of our programs online. So we have about a 40% population of our students that do all online or some online. And so we really do surveys, and we do a lot of community outreach. And our partners, we have Mountain Comprehensive. I think they're here in the audience. We have ARH, we have KCOC, we have all of our community action agencies. They are our partners. They come to us and they say, well, I'll give you an example. They say, this is what we hear that you need. So we recently opened up a new campus in one of our counties that we did not have a campus. And we all hear it in the world right now of higher ed. We have too many buildings, too many this, too many that. Well, we listened to the community, and our partner there with KCOC helped us. They bought this building. It was an old nursing home, and renovated this building. And they told us, if you just lease it, like, we have to pay, I think, $50 per student. And we thought it was, okay, that's a good idea. Well, we're 2 years in, our enrollment just went up to over almost 700 there at that campus.
Housing? That's what you're using?
No, it's not housing. It's an industrial campus is what we call it. And it has HVAC short-term programs. And it has just absolutely catapulted. And we have a perfect blend of non-traditional and traditional students at that campus. Welding, we just opened CDL, so it finished at that campus and we're transferring it to another campus. So we don't keep programs at specific campuses if we can move them. And so we'll have linemen at the Harlan campus, and then we'll move it to that campus. So we really listen to our partners, our community, our students of what they need. And so it's becoming more flexible. And like I said, I'm an old timer, and the flexibility within the programs and the campuses has been one of the best things that we could have done. And our workforce department is also, when I refer to academics, it's workforce also. So workforce offers short-term programs there on those campuses. And our workforce department and academic department, and even student affairs, we work so well together. And so it's not like a silo.
Are you moving any student services like advising or admission counseling to alternate evening or online as well?
That is one thing we're working towards. We do have online tutoring now, and we do have a specific online tutoring for disability students. We are working, that is one of the initiatives that we have got in our SIM plan, is to start building upon the online student services. Now, we have in some form Like, for example, we have one campus that does not have a full-time financial aid. Now, when I talk about one-stop shops, we do not have a financial aid person that can help with admissions, records, registration, or anything. That's doing the actual work. Now, we have the student success coaches that can help fill out an application, but as you know, you have to have that, separation of duty. But now they can link to another campus and get financial aid assistance. So that is one thing that we're doing. But now KCTCS does have a 24/7 hotline that they do for all of the institutions, and they can get help after hours, weekends, for admissions, registration, their schedule, financial aid, anything with that hotline. And that.
So we've been given the wrap-up signal. So thank you all so much for your time. Thank you for your questions. Sorry if we were not able to get to them. I believe we will all be sticking around for lunch. So I think we're going to be happy to talk further if you do have anything else. So again, thank you all, and thank you for the work you do to support adults.